Did your planter cost you yield this fall? I'm not talking about poor or uneven emergence either. I'll explain a very common planter error that's literally leaving yield in the fields in today's Iron Talk. In some areas, the spring of 2020 was dry and the soil was light and fluffy. It was easy to have the trash whipper set a little too aggressive, at least for parts of each field. The result was building a trench with soil berms just a few inches away from the row. The plants grew very well, and in many cases, the soybeans put on heavy pod loads all the way to the lowest nodes. The problem quickly became that the combine couldn't reach those lowest nodes due to soil berms that had pushed up along the side of the rows. I see this problem every year in parts of many farms. One response I get from farmers is that soybeans shouldn't pod that low, and they should pick beans that pod a little bit higher up. Unfortunately, that's not really how it works. You see, each trifoliate on a soybean plant feeds the pods at the node that it's attached to on the stem. If you space your soybeans properly and you get sunlight down to those bottom branches, you're going to have more pods and more yield on those lower nodes that could potentially end up in your combine. That's a good thing. So how do you get those pods into the combine? First, you may consider rolling the ground to flatten out any berms that were made with the planter. In fact, you could even roll before planting to make it a little bit easier to set your planter and do a great job in the first place. Another possible solution would be to invest money in your planter and get self-adjusting residue managers or units with controls for manual adjustment from the cab. Either way, you've got a much better option than having to get out of the tractor multiple times each field to make adjustments as the soil conditions change. Walk your fields after harvest. Look at why you left some beans in the field. Then address the problem with your planter to get those free bushels into your combine next season. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.